found out, we had known Ralph worked on Close Encounters, and we knew Ralph worked on Battlestar Galactica. But there were more and more things that would come up, and we'd realize, gosh, you've done a lot of things that the fan base isn't really aware of. And we were more and more inspired over time to get this into the public eye, to get people to know Ralph for more than just Star Wars, which was really, even now, that's what Ralph will always be remembered for, because he made such a monumental contribution to it. But there were so many other things he did, and so many other stories he had that hadn't been told. We said, Ralph, we want to do a book of your work. We want to publish a big, heavy coffee table book that will represent everything you did and not just Star Wars. And he kind of laughed and said, well, others have tried, and it's never really worked out. But you guys go. You're young, go for it. Whatever you want to do, I'm on board. And it turns out that others had gone down this path, had approached, had kind of deals in place. And usually where they would get hung up is they would contact Lucasfilm. And at the time, one particular publisher, a gentleman named Byron Price, who had used Ralph and had Ralph do some really beautiful illustrations for Isaac Asimov short story collections. Mm-hmm. He approached Lucasfilm and basically was told, you can have 2 pages of the interior and nothing on the cover of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And from his standpoint, it's like, how do you sum up Ralph's contributions to Star Wars in 2 pages? And really, that's the marketable aspect of the book. So it never happened. So undaunted, we pressed on. We had some friends working at Lucasfilm that we knew, and we basically built a mock-up of the book we wanted to do, and got our foot in the door and made a pitch. Right. And rather cavalierly made the pitch that what we were going to do is a 2-volume set. And first we were going to do a book of Ralph's non-Star Wars work to prove that we were capable of this. And then that would, prove to Lucasfilm that we were legitimate, and they could then allow us to do a Star Wars volume. And they patted us on the head and said, that's nice, but leave us your sample. We've got some changes happening in publishing, and we'll get back to you. And about 2 weeks later, we got a call saying, we talked about it. Everybody's kind of excited. The one thing they agree is it needs to be 1 volume, and it needs to have Star Wars. So what do you need from us? Wow. And we were kind of slack-jawed. It's like, well, we need access to the archives of what you have. Yeah. They said, okay. We thought, all right. They said, well, how much are you thinking this would be? And so I immediately kind of, in my head, I'm doing calculations. I said, we want to do a 400-page book, a third of it Star Wars. And they said, okay. And then we were kind of in shock, like, all right. And the next thing I know, we've got access into their digital archives at the level of their highest licensees. And we're suddenly, going through files and pointing out things that, hey, you've got this marked as Ralph's and it's not his, or you've got this other thing unidentified and it is Ralph's. So we were able to kind of add some value to the process, but basically went through pulling artwork. I'll never forget one day in talking to Ralph about what he wanted to see in there. He had mentioned, he's like, well, there's this one painting I really loved. It's probably my favorite Star Wars painting. We said, well, that's got to be in there. What is it? He said, it's one of the pieces I did for the Star Wars Holiday Special, which is the notorious, aired once and never seen again, except for the bootleg copies that circulate about the Wookiee homeworld. But we thought, well, again, if it's Ralph's favorite piece, that's going in this book. And we approached our contacts in licensing, and we said, hey, we don't see this, but Ralph, this is Ralph's favorite piece. We want it in. And they said, well, anything having to do with the holiday special, That's got to go across George's desk. And we thought, well, they've never said no to us yet. So we said, okay, ask George. And a week later, we get a call saying, George said, okay. And it's like, yeah, because George loved Ralph. George, knew what a valuable contributor Ralph was. And I think they also were clear that what we were trying to do was honor Ralph. We weren't just trying to, get our piece of Star Wars and, have a product that we could say is a Star Wars product. We were doing a Ralph McQuarrie book. And it was constantly like that. The entire relationship. I've been involved in several licensing projects with a lot of major licensees. And if I listed all the names, anyone would point to Lucasfilm and say they were probably the hardest to work with. And the absolute opposite is true. They didn't ask anything of us. They didn't ask to review what we were doing. They basically just, every time we asked for something, they handed it over. They invited us over one day. They said, we're about to ship 10,000 35 millimeter slides back to ILM. Before we do, would you like to go through them?
Wow.
Again, it's like, yes, what time should we be there? And in the process of this, we found photographs of Ralph working. We found photographs of Ralph's paintings that Ken Ralston and Joe Johnston and Dennis Murin had taken pictures of. They just basically set them up and take a picture with a 35 millimeter camera. And it turns out there were slides of Ralph's paintings that had changed, meaning as the designs changed, oftentimes Ralph would just repaint over the original version. So I found a particular slide of an image that had never been really seen before, because the finished painting is very common and had been widely published, but this particular variation, no one really knew existed. So I was thrilled, and we ordered up this particular slide. And that was a case where, when they uploaded the new digital images, I was really excited, and I went through them and I thought, wait, there's a missing one. There's supposed to be one of this, it's the TIE fighter cockpit. And the people in the archive said, oh, no, we didn't scan that one because we already have it. And I'm like, you don't already have it. I said, it's actually different than the one you have. But they went back and they scanned it, and we were able to get it and use it. But again, these little bits of history that, to the untrained eye, you'd never notice. But we were having a blast. We were just, every turn, every corner, there were new discoveries being made.